All right, everyone. Welcome to the first official review from Free Wills Foundation's members. Today I'm going to go through a pretty in-depth review of the Hammerhead Karoo 2. Kind of hard to read from the box. Not going to do an unboxing. It's not that glorious. But this is the unit. You may have seen it in one of the podcast episodes recently. But I wanted to talk about this as the cycling computer that I picked up recently that is probably the only cycling computer I'm going to want going forward. Now, I have, in previous reviews on my own Cycling with Daryl channel, discussed how I had used the Palm cycling computer, basically the Palm cycling phone. It's a small phone, Android-based, as a cycling computer. And what I had done was bought the Mophie charger pack for it, a mounting system, and basically used Ride with GPS on it because that's what our club used, and Spotify with Cache Music. I then moved away from that because the battery life was kind of rough. Even with the Mophie battery pack, maybe 3 hours is all I would get. 4, depending on how I change my battery use kind of tendencies. And in the middle of this, I had to upgrade my watch from the Garmin Instinct Solar to the Garmin Fenix S6S Pro. And one of the things that I found out was that the Garmin could do turn-by-turn navigation. We use that term loosely. It can do navigation, and it had a Spotify app if you had the Pro where you could store music locally. So I was like, all right, this might be able to do everything I need. So I tried that for a good 3 or 4 rides and found out like it was very lacking for me in the navigation component. It did everything I needed music-wise, like it with GPS active and music. Maybe 6.5 hours. So it would get me what I wanted for the time frames that I would normally ride. The problem that I ran into is just the navigation was just not what I wanted. The interface for the Fenix was really minimal. I couldn't get notifications for directions if I had to change panels. So like if I wanted to see my heart rate or anything, I had to swap around manually on the watch. And all you would get is a beep. And the problem with that is you would also get beeps from the Varia. And it was oftentimes late for letting me know that a turn was supposed to happen until after the turn had actually happened. The bigger confusing thing for me, though, was trying to discern between the beeps, what was me about to get run over, and what was I needed to make a turn. I wanted something closer to Ride with GPS. I really liked that. Like I set up a route, I have it in my ear, and it'll say like, hey, in 500 meters or a half mile, turn left on so-and-so. Rest stop ahead in 2 miles. And I really liked that. And it was one of those things that wasn't very well documented when the Karoo 2 came out, or even when the Karoo was out, when they mentioned turn by turn, what that meant. So when I first took the Karoo out for a ride, I was pleasantly surprised to find that on a route, it will pop up visually and say like, hey, you need to turn, right at so-and-so street. But it'll also, if you have Bluetooth headphones paired to it, tell you like, turn right in 250 meters on so-and-so. So at this point, navigation-wise, it was already superior than just about anything I'd been doing besides the phone. The thing that I did like is it didn't produce a lot of false negatives like Ride with GPS did. One of the routes that I rode, there's a point where like the road goes straight, deviates for like a few meters in an intersection and goes straight. It would tell you to turn right. But if you actually turned right, you would be off course. It was basically like a continue straight. The Karoo 2 did not follow that same paradigm. It didn't be like, hey, you need to turn right. My bad. Turn around and get back on course. The other good thing that it does is it does assist you in getting back on course. Because the second time I rode it after the first major update, one of the things I noticed is that audio alerts weren't working. Now, in the video we'll go through later, I'll show you actually where this is. It got turned off in the update. But what happened is I looked down and I was like, holy shit, I'm off course. But it literally just said recalculating like you're used to in a car. And it just said continue ahead for another mile and make a right. And then it shows you what will happen is the course will be red. And when it merges back onto the original course, it'll turn back to yellow. It'll say you're back on course and continue everything as usual. So that for me was phenomenal because that was one of the things I hated about Ride with GPS and the Garmin. There's all this work about building a course, but inevitably things can go wrong. You just miss a turn. You couldn't go that route because it was detoured. And Ride with GPS would just like make klaxon noises in your ear like wah, over and over. But it's like, good luck, son, you're on your own. This makes that process a lot easier by saying, hey, no, it's just going to keep the navigation. Nothing will change for you. You'll just hear a different cue in your ear for the next turn. But it's going to do everything it can to get you back to your location. When you first set the device up, you can cache maps regionally, like you can cache the entire U.S., which if you're a national writer might be worth it. I live in North South Carolina, so I cache those 2 states so that I don't have to have data at all if I'm writing in those areas. When you're in a new area, you can literally in the Karoo navigate and say, I want to cache or download these maps. But for a navigation device, it is far superior than anything I've seen from Garmin or Wahoo. I was on the verge of buying the Wahoo Element Roam, except for like the number one complaint was visibility. And that's kind of a pain in the ass. Like if you're riding in full sunlight and you can't see your damn map, it's like, what the fuck do you have the map for? Because this is basically an Android device with an Android screen, it is very easy to see, in the daylight. I've yet to have a scenario where I'm squinting trying to see what the hell's going on. The one thing I have had to do, and it's more of a result of a change in settings after the last update, was, like I said, on that second ride, the audio alerts weren't working. So I was constantly having to turn the screen back on and be like, did I miss a turn? Well, now that I got that straightened out, it's not something I have to worry about. But so let's I did a quick recording of kind of the UI to walk us through some components of it, so we can discuss like how it's built, some of the major power points, like things that make it really strong, and showing that it is an Android device and you can load anything on it. So we'll start, and you'll see the main screen here, which you list. Those are profiles in the center, which are basically just data layouts. And at the bottom, we have this navigation bar, which is, we'll go into rides real quick. This just lists all your existing rides that you have recorded on the Karoo. But at the we list routes. This is cool because I have this integrated with GPS, where if I pin a route, it just shows up in here. So it automatically gets processed into Karoo. Workouts are more for trainer road. Profiles is where we configure these data screens. So we'll go into road, which is the one I normally use. This is one of the panels. This is this is like the data panel, an optional one. And then if we scroll back over, we'll see the map or the navigation. Now the great thing is you can tap on any of these tiles and you can change the content to anything that's here, like even down to shifting, which is something that's cool for me. With a Di2, I can be like, here's the gear I'm in, here's the battery percentage. So it is super customizable and easy to do so for any data panel that you want to see on a ride. So we'll look at sensors. So it supports ANT and Bluetooth. You can see here I have my Varia radar and the heart rate, which is broadcast on ANT Plus from the Phoenix 6. Obviously not on, but they're there. And if we scroll further to right, these are Android applications that I've manually loaded via the ADB shell. You'll notice Spotify and the tool that I'm using to record this right now. But if we open one of these, you'll realize like it's the exact same as an Android phone. So we're going to look at Spotify. It's going to look the exact same as if you were on an Android device. And why this is great is because I can use this to download and cache music from Spotify from like my cycling playlist and listen to it through the Bluetooth headphones at the same time that I'm doing navigation. This is the thing I was desperate to get out of my old phone. And in settings, one of the things I want to dig down into is we'll get into the audio settings, audio alerts, because after the second update that I did, what happened is this all basically, it was all set to off, and this is what was causing my problem, where this all audio alerts at the top was off. So what happened is I was expecting the audio alerts because I got them on the first try, but now everything's straightened out. So now I get an audio cue whenever I'm about to get run over or when I have to make a turn. But we'll go in and take a look at what one of the rides looks like. In the Karoo 2, it is very limited. The dashboard for Karoo looks much more like what you'd be used to for Ride with GPS. But you can notice you can pinch and drag around just like an Android phone because it is an Android phone, basically. And you can, at the end of a ride, manually click upload to Strava. What I'm currently doing now is going to the dashboard, downloading the fit file, and applying it to Garmin, which then fans out into all my other services. But the thing that is really great about this is beyond this, when we pare it down to how I always wanted to use a computer and kind of the life that you get out of it. So my big thing was navigation, all right, sensor pairing. Right now, I only have the heart rate sensor because on my Argon, I don't have any other sensors yet. I'm going to add a set of cadence sensors and a power sensor in power meter in the next couple of months. But at that point, everything's condensed there. Heart rate's coming from the Phoenix. So it becomes my central recording point, right? It's also doing the navigation. A lot better than anything else I like and I've used before, because we have turn by turn, and it's a lot easier to read, let's be honest, than like ride with GPS visually. Once I have taken it out on a ride, I can't right now. My the rear tire on the Argon is blown. I've got to get it replaced with some GPX 5000s next week. When I go on the next ride, what I'll do is I'll record some of the visual output for what it looks like when you're navigating. It's pretty straightforward. You're an arrow following a path, and it'll pop up little icons at the bottom, like in turn right in 300 meters, that kind of thing. But I like that navigation. But I also like music. I like being able to have Spotify. So this, I already had solved that pairing of concerns with the Palm phone bundle. The problem was batteries. So when I started taking this out on rides, it was a question of what is this going to look like over time when I'm using this side-loaded Spotify app as well as the navigation suite. And this is where things get really interesting. So they have a really complicated and kind of hard to read, like how much battery can I get out of it with this, use case on their website. And they talk about like the worst case scenario is something like 12 hours because you got like 18 sensors and you're doing GPS at every second and you're running music too. So I didn't really have a good comparison, but I took it out for the first ride I ever did, was just an hour, just to try and get out there and see what it was going to act like. And after an hour of full-blown audio output, playing off disc, basically recording the event with 2 sets of sensors, it only chewed through 7% of the battery on board. So in that measurement, we're talking like 10, maybe 11 hours of use. And you can even tune the battery further down. Like if I'd cut the audio out to 50%, cut the brightness of the screen, and use the screen less, I probably could have gotten that past that. But let's be honest, I'm an endurance rider, but I'm not a ride 12 hours a day kind of endurance rider. So that works perfectly for me. Like when I go do the MS bike ride, maybe 6.5 hours. But a lot of those times there's sags. And the sags will have charging devices. So I could literally, like while we're eating lunch, charge this thing up. Now, the other thing that I have started using recently, I haven't had to lean on very heavily, is it does have a companion app for cell phones. And what I've turned to is, now that I'm not using the phone for, computing purposes, I leave it in my waterproof bag attached to the Argon as kind of my lifeline to the world. Like if anything goes sideways, I do have this phone, which if I'm not using it, is going to last like 8 hours on the internal battery and the external battery. But I have it Bluetooth paired to the Karoo, so if someone sends me a text message or anything, it'll pop up on the Karoo like, hey, you got a message, and you can just ignore it or whatever. But I do have that flexibility now, so like if the wife is like, where the hell are you? I can at least get notified just by when she calls or sends me a text or something. I don't see that that's really chewed through the battery a lot, but it is important to note that it's a Bluetooth connection. Bluetooth is generically more expensive power-wise than Ant Plus, so it's something I'd keep an eye on. I'm not super worried about it because it's not like I'm popular and people call me all the time. But I will say this is the cycling computer I've been looking for since I started. I tried a bunch of different things, which I felt like I was settling. Like the bike, like the Palm phone feels like a good fit if they could just make the battery last longer. And that was the biggest problem. Is it was like, it's aimed towards like, I like Ride with GPS. I just want to use Ride with GPS. The funny thing is I realized I could have literally loaded Ride with GPS on this as a side-loaded app and used it, but you would have defeated like 90% of the purpose of having the Karoo, in that its navigation is fantastic. So I had some of it solved with the phone. I felt like there was more. So I had started originally just thinking like I could offload music to the watch. Realized that didn't really buy me much. It was the GPS that was chewing through the battery. So then I started saying, well, let's just use the watch. And it was, I mean, battery-wise, it was there. Music-wise, it was there. But the light, the feasibility for using it for navigation was just not there. So then I pre-ordered the Karoo. And when it came in and I took it on the first ride, it was like a religious moment where I was like, I have found the tool that works for me, that does what I want. And it's always being updated. That was the really cool thing is, software-wise, there is practically no difference between the Karoo 2 and the Karoo 1. The only thing that's different is the hardware. They cut the form factor down. They made it lighter. They changed a few things about like how the SIM card can be loaded, etc. But the software that's running is the exact same. The only thing that's different is it's foundationally on Android 8 on the Karoo 2 as opposed to earlier versions. So I highly recommend it because at $399, which is what I paid for it, you're already at the same price as an Element Roam, but I feel like you have a better platform for navigation, sensor collection, and data presentation. Because normally what you want on your screen is basically your navigation. And when you can build these panels however you want, there's like a bunch of presets. Like I like the navigation is split where you have the map at the bottom and some key metrics at the top. You can have it split 3 fucking ways. You can have all kinds of panel breakouts, but I like that because then you have key metrics there. You can swipe to the left or right or use the buttons on the side to swap between those panels and have a shit ton of additional data. Like, one of the things I can see being very useful is having my core metrics, which are like heart rate, cadence, speed, and distance traveled on the main panel. And then on the side panel, you can get elevation data for like pending elevation, elevation done, wattage, so that like when you get into the grind, you can look at it and be like, all right, I can't see how much farther this goes, but according to this, I've still got like 900 more feet to climb, so I'm going to cut back. That's how I see it being very, very useful, and just 90% of the time leaving it on the navigation panel and letting it basically just drive me where I'm going and give me some information about heart rate, because heart rate, now that I've started a structured training regimen, has become more important. I noticed that I push way too hard when I'm on the road. I'll end up in like the upper end of threshold into like danger zone because I'm trying to push like 23 miles per hour. But now that I'm more cognizant of it, it's easier for me to back off and say like, let's slow down. The speed's not so important. So TLDR, I highly recommend trying this device. I'll have some better videos in the weeks to come of just what the navigation looks like. But to me, this solves all the wants at a relatively reasonable price, considering like the Edge 1030 is $600 fucking dollars. It's the same price as the Element Roam anyway, but way more functional. So now the one downside is if you were looking for something to integrate with an indoor trainer, this might not be for you. They support Trainer Road and that's it right now, whereas like Wahoo supports a gajillion things. But if you're an outdoor rider, you're looking for something to help you navigate and help you kill the tedium, get the Karoo 2, hands down. It's worth the investment. So once again, this was Daryl Breeden. This has been my review of the Karoo 2 by Hammerhead. I hope you find this useful. If so, comment below, subscribe to our channel. I will also update here as we have new podcast episodes. I'm going to be working on one possibly solo tonight, talking specifically about structured versus unstructured riding, as well as finding a bike shop. But anyway, once again, this is Daryl Breeden signing off. See you later.